Hi, everyone. I'll start with, I love design systems. I could spend all day looking at fonts and spacing and design token structures and naming conventions, motion. You could just keep going on. Like, we're in a really happy place there, and I think I'm very kind of lucky to spend a lot of my time doing that. But I'm not going to talk about any of that today. I'm going to talk about the business of design systems. I'm going to try and get out of the way. I may look at my screen. Talk about the business of design systems and thinking about design systems as a startup. Now, my name is Jon Reidy. I run interaction design and design systems at T. Rowe Price, and I did a very similar thing at HSBC just before that. Okay, I'll start with a scary one. Now, data shows us that most design systems fail in the first 2 years. And when a design system fails, if you think about what happens, that program fails, teams get moved around, some people could lose their jobs. You know, it's really difficult, but it happens all the time. And it's good to think about that when you're just setting out. Now, I think the reason why design systems fail is because they fail to show the value to their leaders. And then the leaders cut the funding, and that's kind of how it all works. Funding gets cut, design system, and then it's gone. All the Figma files, all of that work disappears. So you have to really think the underlying goal of any business, and they don't really teach us this when we're at university or when we're kind of starting our careers, the underlying goal of any business is to make money. Even charities are there to make money so they can do really good things and have value. They're not there to make design systems. So they're looking for their design system, and they're looking for design to help them with that underlying goal. And always kind of think about that when we're trying to translate all of this great work into kind of commercial value. So if we really just always keep an eye, especially if you're in a leadership position, I guess any position, really think about that value. And it really is quite simple. When you're selling a business case or you're trying to convince people, then you're promising this amazing world of design systems. You're pitching it, then you're creating it, and then you're shouting about it. So always kind of think about the value. So pitching the value, that's kind of stage one. So it's quite an easy sell. You know, like it's easy sell because it's going to save us loads of money. It's going to speed everything up. It's going to create all this consistency. You create a business goal. You kind of make all these promises. And it's a really good sell. That's why pretty much every major company at this stage has a design system. But you've got to remember that everything that you say and promise, you're going to have to deliver on. Now, you've made the promise, you've sold them on everything, everything's excited, you've got some funding, some teams are being set up. Now you actually have to do the work. So you have to create all of the value that you promised that you would. Now, this is the fun bit, but it's really, really hard. And you're going to spend most of your time on it. Now, people think about Figma and they think about components and stuff like that, but if you think about design systems, every aspect of it, you can see that it's a big world out there. Now, I use a very detailed kind of version of this to track every aspect and a kind of basic high-level system design, really, on looking at inputs through to strategy. And as your design system, your business starts to evolve, and you start to get your adoption, teams move very quickly into a position of reliance on the system, all these teams of designers and developers start to rely on you. Therefore, the businesses rely on you, and you have to think of every single aspect of what you're doing, and then you need to keep honing and improving that in order to keep up with demand. So it's good to going back to this metaphor of thinking about it as a business, as a startup. You know, you have your investors, the people that fund the system. If you just think really simply, there's some people that are choosing to pay for this and not pay for something else. You've got customers that use the system, and they're the ones that are going to create the value with you, like a partnership. I say customers, but I'm using this metaphor, but you know what I mean. It's the community, it's the partnership that you play with that. And then you have the design system team that are going to do all this hard work, going to get it done. and they're gonna make it all happen. And you really need to start thinking about the value exchange. We're used to thinking about CX and personas and archetypes and stuff. I think you need to think about in the same way when it comes to your kind of design system and your ecosystem. So let's start with investors. We need to really empathize what they need. So they are looking for improved efficiency, and they need to show the results to the business. They're looking for quality improvements, efficiency improvements, and they're under a lot of pressure to show results. And what we need from them is we need them to keep funding. So when it comes up next year and they're sitting in a room somewhere and someone asks them, hey, how's it going with the design system? Do we still need that? You need them to say yes. That's kind of how it all works. They need to believe in you, and you need to give them what they need to support them in the roles that they're playing. So customers, these are your customers. We're going to break this down a little bit from design, product, and development. There's lots of other customers, but I'm just going to focus on some of these main ones. You think about what a designer needs. So you're working with a designer outside of your design system. Now, these really should be your home team. They should be your best friends. Doesn't always work that way. If you're in huge companies, you can have lots of different pockets. Some people are going to want to use a system, some people aren't. But they're going to really understand, I think, you, and they're going to understand the value of it. Now, what do they want out of this value exchange? Now, they want to do great work. They want to make and then they need to be heard. So they need to have an influence on the design system and feel like it's a two-way street. And what you really desperately need from them is you desperately need adoption, engagement, and advocacy. And if you don't have this, again, all of this ends with design failure. Developers are very different from designers, of course, but they generally want the same things. They want to do great work, they want to be heard, they want to have an influence. They're experts in their field. They're the closest ones to the clients and to the customers. So they need to be heard, and they really should be. And we need the same thing from them. Very similar: adoption, engagement, advocacy, where it doesn't work. Product folks. This is Lewis is here right now from YLD. We were talking about this after another conference. Now, it's really the forgotten element of a lot of design systems, and I think this is a point of failure. So you really think about product folks, so product owners, product managers, however they're kind of called in your business. They are thinking about delivery, they're under pressure, they want to show results, they've got capacity constraints. Now, the decision for adoption can sometimes really live in this space. So you've got designers and developers, and they want to adopt, and you're talking to them all the time, you feel really comfortable. But these are the people maybe that you don't work with, and they're the ones that are going to decide whether to take the system or not. So sometimes, they're like the parents in the situation. So you have to really kind of speak to them in a different way and think about what their needs are. And then you've got your own team. You can't forget your own team, because a design system team is not a standard design or development team. These are the guys creating and managing the system. Now, it's easy for a design system team to feel isolated, for their work to feel like a continuous cycle of small releases, invisible releases, while you've got lots of emails flying around about a site going live or a page going live. And it's about connecting them to the outcome and making them feel really connected to successes, I think, to kind of bridge that. And you also need them to feel really connected to the community and to build that relationship, because if you don't have that relationship, then you have a big, big problem culturally. Now, coming back to my analogy about startups and businesses, you really need to think of adoption like sales. That is the sales of a design system. Business can't survive without bringing money in, without successes, without sales. So use an analogy of you can tell at this point I love metaphors. So thinking about like a pizza shop, a pizzeria. You could have the best pizzeria in the world. It could have the most beautiful pizzas using all the right ingredients. You could have amazing furniture, amazing everything. But if it doesn't sell pizzas, none of it matters. It's finished. It's dead. And if design systems don't get adoption, they are dead. And it really doesn't matter about Figma files or presentations or championship programs or anything, unless you're also delivering value to the business, because that is the only point where the business will see value. As again, Figma files, code, they're enablers to get the value. They don't have any value in themselves. So just like any new innovation, I always kind of use this innovation bell curve that you kind of see everywhere. You're going to deal with lots of different personalities and different personas. You're going to have your laggards through to your kind of early adopters. I would always, in my experience, always concentrate on happy path first. Try and get some points on the board, get some wins, get your feet under the table and start being able to really show value quickly in the most easiest places, because you need to start showing it very quickly. Don't get stuck with the laggards, trying to police, trying to convince over on the right-hand side, because you're just going to have a nightmare and it's going to really destroy your momentum, because you need to have the wins on the left that give you proof points, give you confidence, even in yourself, so the laggards so you can kind of come back to them. And as the way, if you look at the innovation bell curve, it's the pressure of the left-hand side that forces the right-hand side to work. So when you get to this point, this tipping point of kind of early majority, and you go from kind of pushing this rock up a hill and it feeling really, really difficult, to it kind of rolling over the other side, and before you know it, you are chasing after adoption because you can't keep up fast enough. Because you go from kind of, hey, can you use these buttons? Yeah, maybe, to full experiences rolling out. And then everyone's talking about, hey, like I'm missing this, I'm missing that, I need this. And it's a completely different kind of situation. So again, my focus is a lot about adoption, because I always think adoption is the key to kind of all outcomes. So there are some really classic hurdles that you see, and it's good for you to kind of think about. So the first one I see is kind of dependency risk, especially in kind of a lot of more, I'd say at this stage, very traditional agile teams. Got lots and lots of separate startups like that exist in a business, and they're all very self-contained, and they're really not used to working together, and they see any form of dependency on another group as a massive risk. So you'll go in and you'll see status reports, and it'll say risk using design system, risk/dependency, and it's a completely different thing. So it's about building that trust, getting it in their hands, going from the abstract to the literal, of showing them the components, showing them working, and getting them to trust. And they will trust you, and that will seem so different once they start using the system. Oh, it's quicker to do it ourselves. Again, same thing. We'd rather do it ourselves because we feel comfortable. I've got my team of 8 people. We'll build everything from scratch. It might take 10 times the amount of time, but it doesn't matter because I feel confident about it. But the business, they feel a very different way. And then it's also like, oh, we're good, thanks. We're good. If it ain't broke, why would we fix it? We've got buttons already. What do we need your buttons for? So that, I think, you have to start thinking entrepreneurial about this. Your job is to get adoption, get sales for the business, or else your business won't exist. Your design system won't exist. So you start to think, what is the adoption drivers? Massive one, accessibility. You go into an existing world, some of those sites are 10 years old, they think they're great, but then when you start to really assess it, you start to connect it with leadership and say, okay, well, accessibility is now a major thing now for this business, and that culture can change where it really exists. So then you start saying, wow, whoa, it is broke, it isn't accessible, so how are you gonna make it accessible? Design systems. Got a new site or a new app, that's a perfect position because you've got less kind of sunk cost fallacy, less issues about people pride and people that design things already because it's a fresh new start, perfect opportunity for design systems. And then brand refresh. How do you deliver a global brand refresh without a design system? That is, leadership will understand it, but also the designers and developers will understand that that's the only real way. So you're gonna kind of work together, you're gonna deliver it. Okay, like Marion said, the whole kind of using growing and planting as a metaphor. So I've done the same thing. One thing I think I've learned quite recently, probably in the last year or so, is that adoption as a word can be very confusing, and people can understand it in different ways. Like I started thinking about adoption as pretty much phase 1. Leadership we're thinking about as phase 2 is getting confusing. So I'll kind of run through this. Phase 1 of adoption, if we're thinking about a design system, let's say we're thinking about websites. So a design system is the phase 1 is about seeding, about initial adoption. That is when a website takes the component in, they integrate it and they use it once. But then if there's 1,000 pages, that's when phase 2 comes in, when that button or that group of components gets moved out and relaunched and goes across the whole site. So phase 1 is really where you get, I'm going to jump through to this actually. Phase 1 is when you start to see financial benefits and savings, because a team didn't have to create a component themselves. They didn't have to maintain a component themselves, and they did it, and they're using your system first. They get that same saving on the first page, and they probably get the same savings on the 1,000th page as well. So think of that as kind of initial, this is really where you can kind of really focus on savings and showing those savings. So let's go through this. Let's think about a button. Always pick on the button with design systems. Cost to create a button, let's say it's £10,000. That's the hours for design, development, research, whatever you put into your button. Now let's say you use that 10 different teams, because often, depending on your business, you could have 10 different teams, all different libraries, all different repositories. You have to be accurate. It's not just 10 different websites all using the same repository, because that doesn't count. It's about 10 different times that button would be created without you. So they didn't have to create the button 10 times. They could use yours. So that saving is 100,000. And so to be accurate about it, you need to kind of take away your costs, their savings, and then you've got a net savings of 90,000. Obviously, this is really kind of dumbed down, but it gives you the message. Now, you start to see the scale when you talk about 50 of those components across 10 teams. Then you're into the millions really quickly, and this is a massive underestimation of the price. So it's a really easy thing to sell, and if you can start tracking it, it's a really, really good thing for leadership to see. It's not everything, but it really, really kind of helps. So kind of staying on phase 1, just to get a bit more literal about it, you kind of got a library. You got your library on the left-hand side. Like as Marion was saying, that's your kind of potential. You've got 16 great components that could be used. You're looking, let's say you're tracking 5 different sites. Where is that component being used? And every time that component gets used on the first page, cha-ching. That saving comes in, you measure it, goes into the quarterly reports, and that is the savings you're giving to the business. And tracking that initial adoption is a leading metric for that second phase when you start to see the rollout. So you can't really roll it out until you do the first phase. You get the button on a website, do some testing, there's a bug, fix the bug, it's ready, goes on the first page. Now it goes out to the 5th page, to the 50th page. So once you start getting these components out, you start getting all of those benefits for the customer. Accessibility, consistent look and feel, could be mobile responsive, like it's been in my situation before. Could be faster performance, could be different things like that. And then that equals business value, because always think to yourself, does the CEO care about accessibility? I'm sure they do on a deeper human level, but they are thinking about the bottom line, and they're thinking about things like client retention, brand perception, increased engagement, increased sales. So you're saving some money, but you're also increasing. You're saving some money in the first phase. In this second phase, you're starting to create better experiences, and you start to have that all of those other tons of outcomes that come out of it. Okay, so now we'll reach near the end of the presentation. Just to focus on shouting about it. So shout about the cost of saving, the cost that you're saving. Shout about the speed to market, quality, consistency. So you pitch it, you promise it, then you make it, then you shout about it and keep shouting about it, and then keep it going round in a circle. So it's like pitching new things, promising new things, delivering them, shouting about them. And thanks.